I realize that a lot of the questions that you get in pediatrics are parenting questions, not really medical questions per se, like, toilet training and tantrums and I don't know, whatever, all sorts of behavioral questions. And I just feel like we need a similar approach to integrative medicine when it comes to parenting. And integrative parenting to me means taking in the different philosophies that are out there for any given question and integrating those together to figure out what makes sense for you.
I'm Rees. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast, where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sophia Unfiltered. I'm Rees, and today's episode, we're talking about children's health with Dr. Joel Warsh. He's a board-certified pediatrician specializing in parenting, wellness, and integrative medicine. We're excited to have you here to discuss topics that many parents are struggling with. I'm a new mom myself. My son is almost 18 months old, so I can't wait to dive into this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to chat too.
Yeah, so do you want to tell us a little bit, for our listeners who may not know you, a little bit about your background and how you got into pediatrics and then maybe into the integrative medicine specialty?
Yeah. So, I grew up, I would say, a pretty regular life. Grew up in Canada and Toronto. And, I loved working with kids. I realized that when my brother started playing sports and I was coaching him in sports, and I really liked doing that. And then I started working at some camps and I really realized that I love working with kids. And as I went through school, I also realized I like science. And so that's really what led me to medicine. But when I went into medical school, it was really always to become a pediatrician because I just did enjoy working with kids and getting ahead of issues and trying to prevent illness as opposed to just treating it. And as I went through training, I really realized that so much of medicine is really focused on treatment. And that's what led me to really start to focus on integrative medicine and try to get back to the root cause and try to prevent illness as much as possible, because we really just unfortunately aren't doing that enough these days. And I started doing that and people found it really exciting and interesting, and it really has seemed to take off, which has been great. I'm excited to see so many people are interested in this. And I started doing more social media, and my Instagram, Dr. Joel Gator, has really taken off more than I ever imagined it would. And then I wrote a book really because I realized again that when you're on social media, it's like you can only talk about things in really short spurts and you can't really get into anything in detail, or everyone just fights anyways online. So I figured it would be worthwhile to put that together, and I chose to write a book about the young ages, so 0 to 3, because I wanted to talk to parents from day one. I know that a lot of moms, dads, but especially moms, read books while they're pregnant. So I thought that was a really good time to put together a health-focused book on the big things that are going to come up, but also to set the foundations for health, because kids are more sick than ever, and I think we need to set the foundations early.
Yeah, okay, so for our listeners who may not be that familiar with the integrative medicine, can you just give them a big picture of what that means?
So big picture, it would be blending the best of modern medicine with any other alternative health practices out there. So I did all the regular training, trained at a great Western medical school and great pediatrics program, but there are so many other modalities out there, like acupuncture or using supplements or homeopathy or herbs. I mean, there's just so many things that would be considered, air quotes, alternative medicine. And so integrating those in whatever way you feel comfortable and trying to balance the best of both worlds and minimize using medications whenever you can. Not that I'm against medicine. I'm definitely not against medicine, but it's just I tried to minimize using it as much as possible and try to offer natural remedies whenever I can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I think there's out there, when people hear the word alternative, health or alternative medicine, they can get shied away. And then especially when you're dealing with kids, they're like, okay, I don't want to use something that's not proven or rooted in science or anything like that. But integrative is basically just taking like the best parts and I think also like staying healthy too, right? Does that have any component in the integrative piece of this? Like, I use acupuncture a lot, but it's a lot of trying to prevent,
Sure.
preventative.
Right. And that's what modern medicine is quite poor at these days. Medicine is fantastic at treatment, right? I mean, we really are very good at diagnosing things, and we're really great in acute illness or an emergency and going to the emergency room, but we're not very good at prevention. And I would say that at this point, integrative medicine encompasses prevention. I mean, it encompasses thinking about the root cause. It encompasses food and exercise and our diet and toxins and sleep and all these basic things, which really are medicine. It's not really alternative, but focusing on it a little bit more and discussing a little bit more seems to be more alternative these days. It needs to not be, but
Right.
it's not.
Agree.
I mean, there are things in integrative medicine or alternative medicine that could be woo-woo. You can certainly get out there and you can do things that are outside of your lane or that could be dangerous, but most of it really isn't. The vast majority of alternative, supplements and things like that have a ton of research and evidence. They don't always have as much as the medications do because there isn't the money to do that, but the risk is also much lower for most of these things. So there's a lot of good research on like vitamin D, vitamin C, elderberry, zinc. There's tons of studies out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget it. One of our integrative nutritionists, she's like, there's just not as much money going to back studies on broccoli and vitamins as there are, big drugs in pharma companies, and that's so true.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So you went on fast forward and then you wrote a book, right? So you're targeting the 0 to 3-year-old age, and everybody knows I've got, an almost 18-month-old. So what was it out there that drove you to write the book, and what was that message that you were trying to get to the expecting or the new moms?
The two big reasons that I wanted to write the book: number one, I feel like parents are more stressed than ever.
Yes.
I've noticed that in my office. I've noticed the questions that have been coming my way. I feel like parents don't trust their gut, and they really, for the most part, don't know how to synthesize the information, or there's just so much information that it's overwhelming, and then they're really very unsure of what to do or unsure of themselves.
Can you give us an example of maybe what you're seeing that maybe parents are too overwhelmed, in case any of our listeners are like, oh yes, that's exactly how I feel?
I think nearly everything, right? I mean, there's just so much information out there, and you go back 50, 100 years, you wanted to make a decision on something. Let's say like, what food do I start and when for my kid? You ask grandma, oh, what did you do for me? Oh, I started at 6 months. We did peas. All right. Okay, I guess we'll do that. It was easy. I mean, that isn't always the best answer, but it wasn't that complicated because you weren't bogged down with information. But now you
didn't have the first 100 search results on Google, right?
Right.
You had to go to a library and search information. Right. And
exactly. Then you Google it. Then you go onto TikTok or Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And
that's terrible.
The exact opposite thing, and you're like,
yes.
Never give your kid peas. It'll kill your kid. Right.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, now what do I do? Like grandma says this, the influencer says that. And so I thought it was really important to talk through how to think through those kinds of questions, because there is no book that should be able to tell you what to do. You need to learn how to think through these questions so that way you can figure out what makes sense for you, because nobody knows you. I don't know you. A book doesn't know you. The internet doesn't know you. So having information isn't bad. Having Google isn't bad. It's fine to know that there's baby-led weaning and purees, but you need to synthesize what those things are, what you feel like is going to be best for you, and what's going to make you most comfortable, and then try. And that gets back to trusting our gut, which we're not doing. And so I'm trying to empower parents to do that. So that's the first part. And the second part is the health that we talked about. And really just with the realization that, kids are sicker than ever. I mean, I see it. I have kids, and I don't want them to have chronic diseases, and 50% of kids have a chronic disease.
Oh my gosh, kids. And are we talking 0 to 3 years old?
Well, not 0 to 3, like all kids, so till older. But I mean, a lot of kids have chronic disease, and certainly lots of kids that are 0 to 3 have something like eczema, allergies. So we definitely are seeing it more and more. But
that is just so sad.
I know it's terrible, and when you sit here and you watch it, and you go to a classroom or you see the way that kids are doing, it's not okay. And I think we need to get ahead of it. We need to set those foundations. We have to talk about it from day one, because a lot of this is a chronic buildup of issues. It's little things here and there that all add up. And if we are mindful of that and we make some small changes, then we can minimize some of those things that could be adding up and keep our kids healthy.
So you mentioned you said 50% of what we're seeing in kids are like the eczema and the allergies as a chronic condition. Is anything, I mean, I know that's bad, but is that like, are we seeing obesity in like the little baby, like the kids? I mean, what else are we talking here? And my follow-up to that is, are allergies bad? Does that mean there's something, chronically wrong?
So when we're talking about chronic illness, we're talking about acute illness would be something that's, right now.
Break a leg, right?
You get a cold, you break a leg, like, so
Right.
everything else that's more chronic. So it's long term. You might be on a medication, it comes and goes, or it's with you every single day. That's a chronic condition. So there's so many different things that it could be: obesity, yes, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, allergies, eczema, autism, mental health issues. I mean, just anything that is more long term, that would be under that category of chronic disease. And so for all kids, I don't know what the number is for 0 to 3. It's probably lower because they haven't developed them yet. Some of them certainly have, but for all kids, it's 50% or so, depending on what research study you see. And yeah, I mean, I think it's bad. I mean, I don't know if it's bad or good, but I think it's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, kids are not supposed to be sick. We're meant to be healthy. Certainly, no matter what you do, there are some genetics that you might be, sick or have a chronic condition, but that's not what's going on. We didn't go from 1 or 5% to 50% over a few decades because of our genetics. It's because of what we're doing and because of our environment. And I think that's very important to talk about, because these things have to do with our environment and the things that we're doing. Then we can actually do something about it. If we just say, oh, it's just the way that it's supposed to be, I guess they're obese, I guess they have this condition, it's just the way that it is, then we don't take any ownership of it and we don't do anything about it, and we're never going to change it. And things are going to keep getting worse, and your kids are going to be sick. And I don't want that. And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
I think that it's important that we talk about this and really understand that we have a lot of power in this, and it does make a huge difference to things that we do.
So when you mention environment, are we talking environment as in our living conditions, right? Like, are we drinking the good water? Are we talking sleep environment, food?
Yeah, when I say environment, I mean all the stuff that's around us. So if you think about a fish, it's like, well, the environment, the water they're swimming in. For a human, it's where we are, what we're doing. And I think a big part of it is your home, because that's where you are most of the time. So often when I'm trying to talk about things, I really try to focus down on stuff that you can actually do, because you can't really, change the air, right? It is what it is, but you can affect the air in your home to some degree by getting air filters or putting in more plants. You're not going to change the water in your community, but you can get a water filter.
Air filters, yeah.
So,
I mean, and water filters.
So there are things that you can do to improve them slightly. I mean, yes, I guess you can go to, go fight and advocate and whatnot if you want to, but most people aren't doing that. But at least for your own family, there are small things you could do to minimize your exposure. And that stuff adds up. I mean, it really does add up if you can do it. So I think it's important just to note that there are so many little things that we can do, and it is worth to do whatever you can to minimize their risk, because at the end of the day, the fewer chemicals you're exposed to, the better, right? That's just simple math, simple, basic common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things I did as a new mom, right, I was looking into, the EWG verified products, right? So we are solely EWG verified right now for as long as possible. I still make all of his own food, making sure that it's organic as possible. I know that it can even not be so great, but I'm doing all of the things. So when you say environment, I assume that you mean like those could be the situations that could be inducing or creating the rise of these chronic conditions. Is that right?
I think the chronic conditions mostly stem from our crappy food and too many toxins that we're exposed to, and we don't have the nutrients that we need to build a healthy body. And then we're also bombarding ourselves with chemicals, and at some point we just can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it for adults, but then when you have a baby, you want to make sure that they're not getting hit with all of this, right? Like their their little body soaps and shampoos and down to the toothpaste, right? Like it's,
Right.
I can see why all of these companies that are geared towards being sustainable and EWG verified products have come, now I get it, right? Like it's one thing, I didn't know this, but then when you have a baby, you're like, there's so many things that you should be looking into. And that's a really good one. Is there anything else we could be doing when it comes to the environment and protecting them from the toxins and or the lack of nutrients?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one that we haven't talked about is just the food and just making the healthiest food choices possible. And that starts with reading the labels. I think it's so important that we become mindful consumers and try to get back to buying real whole foods as much as you can. Don't get taken in by a fancy box, and read the label on everything. Look what's on it. If it's a long chemical word, it's probably not good for you. Try to minimize your refined sugars. Try to avoid as much added sugar as you can, and just get sugar from actual natural sources. Honey and maple syrup and those kinds of things are better if that's possible with the food that you buy. And try to get back to cooking more. I mean, you know what is in the food if you are cooking it. And yes, it takes more time, but that's really important. And the more food that we buy that is pre-prepared and packaged and processed, then there's all sorts of ingredients to keep it from spoiling, and those things go into us. And that's not the way we're meant to eat for the most part. So it doesn't mean you can't ever have a piece of cake, but if we were eating those foods every day, then those kind of chemicals add up, and that's what's happening.
Now, you talk a lot about integrative parenting, right? So we know integrative medicine, and you talk a lot about integrative parenting. Is that just bringing all of these different integrative preventative tools to parenting to the forefront?
Yeah, well, so when I was going through and has been as a doctor for the last, I don't know, decade or so, I realized that a lot of the questions that you get in pediatrics are parenting questions, not really medical questions per se, like, toilet training and tantrums and I don't know, whatever, all sorts of behavioral questions. And I just feel like we need a similar approach to integrative medicine when it comes to parenting. And integrative parenting to me means taking in the different philosophies that are out there for any given question and integrating those together to figure out what makes sense for you. So again, going back to the example, like feeding your baby led weaning versus purees, those are two different philosophies and people can fight all day about it. But at the end of the day, it's good to know about both, be aware of what they mean, integrate that for yourself, and then figure out what you want to do for your child, and then just go ahead and try it, because for the most part, these things don't actually make any difference which one you do. And there isn't very definitive research either way anyways. So you don't really need to be super stressed if you don't want a baby led wean on day one, even though some influencer says you should.
Oh my gosh, I feel like social media is ruining parenting and making it so stressful for all of us new moms, actually. You brought this up a few times, and I just feel like, that's just cut that out for new mom. It'll be okay.
It doesn't help. There's enough stress and you're not sleeping, and there's just all sorts of pressures that are there anyways. So to add the pressure of, I feel like I'm not doing the right thing, I'm not doing good enough, I need this toy, I need this thing, it doesn't help. And we have to minimize that a little bit. I mean, we're going to have stresses. It's okay to be aware, but there's just too much for sure.
It's just overload. Like it's all overload. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm glad we brought this up. So in your book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, speaking of influencers and having the societal pressures, you talk about the importance of letting kids develop naturally. Like, what brought this philosophy about? And I'm assuming a lot of this was the stress of moms and social media.
Yeah, it's the comparison, right?
Yeah, comparison-itis.
All the time. They're just comparing to other kids, comparing to your first kid, comparing to people online. And again, I go back to, it's okay to be aware, because of course there are times when something is so outside of normal that you do want to be aware because there is something to do about it. But the vast majority of the time when parents these days are concerned about something, it's well within the range of normal. And especially when it's just one thing and then everything else is normal, the need to worry so much that your child hasn't walked yet when they're 13 months or hasn't said a word yet when they're 14 months, but everything else is normal, there's just such a wide range of what children do. And that's the easiest example is walking and talking, because 50% of kids are doing that by about one. So if your kid is 13 months and they aren't, that doesn't mean there's a problem. It just means they're part of the 50% that haven't yet, and they probably will. If your child's 2 and they haven't walked, that's different, right? Then maybe we want to get that evaluated. But when you watch somebody on social media, they only show you the things that they want you to see. And you might see their kid, walking at 10 months, and you're like, oh my God, my kid's not walking at 10 months. What's wrong with me? But their kid's not talking until 16 months. And they don't show you that because they show you only the thing
they want you to see, right?
They want you to see. So that's why I think it's really important when we're talking about development to focus on our own kids, have some information, but at the end of the day, don't worry too much. And also, if you've had 2 kids, then pretty much every parent knows that they're not following the same plan most of the time. One kid walks really well, one kid doesn't. One kid eats really well, one kid doesn't. One kid's a good sleeper, one doesn't. So even in your own family, they don't follow the same plan. And that's an important part of parenting, just to realize that your kid is not going to be the same as your cousins, or they're not going to be the same as the influencer. So don't worry too much.
Yeah. And as for new moms, I can see them worrying, but I can also see how, like, by kid 2, you're like, okay, like you're a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you don't go to the doctor the minute you hit 9 months and you're not walking and talking, so, but all new moms have been there and done that. But by kid 2, and then definitely by kid 3, you're probably like, call me when you need, good luck.
Right, exactly.
I'm sorry, I missed all of your appointments.
Right. And that's, again, it's a very good reason if you just step back and you can hear that, or it's like, I get it. Parents are going to be a little nervous and stressed when they're parents. That's fine. That's not going to ever really totally change. But what I'm trying to help parents do is to decrease that stress just a little bit, And one of the reasons I wrote a book is try to help be that first child so that your child's the second child. Because anybody who had 2 or 3 kids, it's like the first kid, you're so worried about everything. Second or third kid, it's like, why didn't you call me 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, their arm's still on, it's fine. But you decrease that stress once you feel a little more confident in yourself.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we should have confidence in ourselves because we can do this, but we don't have it until we've been through it for a while. And then you're like, oh, whatever, it's fine. So that is where I think we can help, especially young parents, a little bit, to give them a little more confidence, trust themselves a little bit more, so they're not so stressed. So you act more like we're a second-time parent, which usually there's just fewer stresses.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. Right. So I wish I had that book. When you call and they have a bump or, they hit their head, like it's just new moms. If you're out there listening, we get it. We empathize with you, but we hope you can also be empowered. Also, you can read Dr. Joel's book to maybe give you some more tools and tips. But, there's also, besides the social media, there's also apps out there like the Wonder Weeks that tell you where your kid should be developmentally. And I haven't tracked that for a little while. I think it's good because it gives you kind of a range, but it's out there. It's just in everybody's face. You should be doing this. You should have, right?
Right. And for some people that can be, I think you need to know yourself a little bit too, because for some people, an app like Wonder Weeks can be really helpful because they like some structure and they want to be like, all right, well, at this point we should be doing this. So let's work on that so we can do it. But for other people, the structure is really bad because you just know too much and it's like, you don't need to know, right? You don't need to be worried about everything. And there's, you look at the app and it's like, oh, here's the 50 things that they should be doing right now. And half the time those kids are not doing some of those things, but they're totally fine and healthy. And maybe you never even worked on it. Like I've had a few occasions at this point, people using apps or books that look at like the amount of stacking of blocks for a child at a certain age, and their kid doesn't do it, like stacking 10 blocks at whatever age. And it's like, but have you tried? Well, no, we never did it. Okay, well, you have to work on it before, they're going to be able to do it. Like there are a lot of developmental milestones, especially as you get older, where you actually have to practice it and do it, or they won't. So if you're just following along an app, you're going to be like, my kid doesn't stack 10 blocks. Oh no, they must have a issue. And it's like, well, did you try? Because if you did, they probably would, but you just never tried. So those apps can be really nerve-wracking sometimes because they can give you too much information.
Yeah. And it also has things like, okay, see this, like in the very beginning, we use it like, because it was like, this is what your baby can see. They can't see across the room yet. They can't see 3 feet in front of their face. So I thought it was super helpful. What are the specific, your book focuses on 0 to 3. Are there major milestones that you want to break down for any of the moms listening out there that they should actually be paying to as far as when it comes to the child's development?
Yeah. So the big ones that we watch in pediatrics, I would say around 4 months or so, we're looking for rolling, 6 to 9 months looking for crawling, a year looking for walking and talking. I would say those are the big ones in the first year, and then getting better at speaking, having a few words over the next few months, starting to understand a lot more, starting to play with other kids, be around other kids. I mean, these are the things that we're looking for. For me, in the book, I didn't really get into that too much because there are lots of great apps and things out there that you can just Google. I really spend my time on the book with development, talking about how to think about development. And really breaking it down in the way that we kind of discussed it here before, and kind of when to worry and when not to worry, and what the developmental milestones mean and don't mean, because I feel like you don't really need another list. I think it's important to understand what they mean so you know when to worry and when not to worry.
Yeah. And as far as looking at a pediatric level, I mean, 4 months rolling, 9 months kind of crawling, like those are massive. That's way bigger scale than did you stack 10 blocks when you were 8 months old? That is just... I never checked that, but it seems like really big picture, like to give your kids some space to develop naturally, like you discussed. You also bring up the acronym SEEDS. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about what that means and how you use it?
Yeah, it's a big part of the first chapter in the book. And when we were talking about the foundations of health, that's what I call my foundations of health. It's just an acronym, SEED. So stress, environment and toxins, exercise, diet, and sleep. And I feel like those are 5 of really the big foundational pieces to our health, and things that are quite obvious and simple. And we know through tons of research and data that those are very important for our foundational health, but yet a lot of times we don't focus on them and we don't think about it as much anymore. And so I just really wanted to bring people back and focus back on those things as much as they can for themselves and for their children. because at the end of the day, if we're not doing that, then we're not going to be healthy, and we have to get back to that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. And then one more question. So iPhones, computers, the digital age, how do you see that impacting kids' health? I mean, I know personally the AAP, right, says no really screen time before 18 months, but are there any concerns that you have in this, or, what is your take on this?
Yeah, screens. It's a good thing that we're talking about it more. This year there's a lot more discussion on screen time, which I think is great. The biggest issue to me with screens is the amount of time that kids are on it. And, you have to break it down, I think, a little bit with the younger kids and the older kids. Because like you mentioned,
Right.
for the kids under 2, the recommendations are 0 screen time. But I also think that's a little bit misleading and scary, because a lot of parents are like, oh, my toddler was watching cartoons, and the little one, 6 months, turned their head and was watching screens. It's going to turn their brain to mush. And like, no, it's not. I don't think that's what we should be worried about. We don't want to plop them in front of screens for a long time, but I think if they watch a couple minutes of the screen, it's not the end of the world. That's not what I would be focusing on. But I think the real issue is, as kids getting older, we're seeing that amount increase and increase and increase to the point now where it's about 7 to 9 hours of screen time average for teens per day, which is insane. That's so much of the day. And you have to ask yourself, well, what are they not doing if they're on the screen for 7 hours? I mean, they're not getting outside. They're not moving. They're not socializing, they're not cooking, they're not gardening, they're not doing all the other things that we need to be doing in life to be healthy and happy. And so to me, we need to focus on getting that number back down and not demonizing screens, but just making sure that we have some reasonable guidelines and boundaries around being on screens, because it's not the best for our mental health, for sure. It's certainly, the social media is not great for our mental health. And while I think it's okay to do homework on your computer, and that's not what I'm worried about, it's if you're sitting there all day, that is what I'm worried about. And so I think,
And you could be going from gaming to,
right,
and during COVID, you were like, okay, I'm going to go from gaming for breakfast into my school all day long, turn straight into then social media, and then back to gaming at night. So yeah, I guess that's where a lot of the screen time could be coming. COVID didn't help with this, I'm assuming. I didn't.
right. And then you have that plus the phone, but it adds up and you don't realize it. And so
Right.
I think it's just very, very key that we start to look at, okay, what are we doing? How long are we on? Can we mindfully decrease that a little bit, take some breaks during the day, no screens during dinner, no screens in the bedroom at night, no screens first thing in the morning, no screens at school, whatever it is that we need to do. I think that's what we need to do next, so we can just decrease it. It's not going anywhere, but I think we can definitely mindfully decrease it.
Yeah, I like how you said, like, what are we missing that we can put back in, right? Socializing, what can we put back into your schedule so it's not just like taking things away, but that is really scary and something to think about. Dr. Joel, thank you so much for being here. A question that we ask all guests on the show, if you could share 3 fundamental pillars that contribute to your well-being.
I would say, let's see, fundamental pillars. So it's food that I eat, family, and getting out into nature.
Yeah, those are great. Food, family, and nature. Yeah, that's great. Where can our listeners connect with you? How can they find more information on your practice and all the services that you offer?
Best place to find me would be either on Instagram or X at Dr. Joel Gator, or you can grab the book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, anywhere online, Amazon, all the regular places, or parentingatyourchildspace.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and thank you for empowering all the new moms out there that are listening. We need it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Rees. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.